Good evening. Of course, first of all, I should thank ENISE that they have given us the chance to be with you today and to be in such good company. As you know, this is the last roundtable of the day, and we will be speaking about professional development of cybersecurity. This is a thrilling topic right now. We have some challenges ahead of us. Some of them may have to do with trying to draw and define the functions of security in organizations. It's a thrilling moment. We have great speakers with us, and I'm going to introduce them. We have María Jesús Casado, who's responsible for IT and technologies for the Secretary of State. She is in the IT department as a public official, and she works as a professional in the public administration. Then we have Antonio Ramos, who is the Vice President of ISACA Madrid. He's a professional who has been working for many years in risk management and cybersecurity, and generally speaking, risk management and security auditing. And he will try to advocate for ISACA's positions in these matters. This is not a new organization in the field we are referring to. Then we have Rafael Hernández. He's the CISO of CEPSA. He's a professional with an important career, and he has an important advantage or some form of complementarity. You're both very skillful and savvy in IT and also industrial operations. And these are things that are difficult to combine and have to be combined. And last but not least, we have Casado León. He's a corporate CISO of Orange, Spain. He's the CISO of an operator. And he has a vision that's not necessarily the same as that of other panelists. María Jesús, you know that I do not tend to introduce people much because we have to go to the topic. And what do you think about professional development of cybersecurity? Okay, how I see it, cybersecurity is booming. That is something that we could see during this seminar, and we need to have specialized professionals. And in the public administration, of course, leaving aside the Joint Task Force of Cybersecurity or the CCNN, we start requiring or demanding professionals in this field. So we have the first open competition for such positions. The Spanish Revenue Office had an open tender for computer forensic evidence, custody chain, forensic analysis, expert reports, etc. So they included knowledge and experience in cybersecurity. The Municipality of Madrid in June 2017, they also issued an open tender with a more general profile, but also linked to security. Both cases are positions that are linked to technological units. The first one to the revenue computer body, and the second one to the IT department in the municipality. So there's a demand for professionals, but for particular aspects of cybersecurity technology. That's a step forward. But still, in the public administration, we still have a long way forward because we need to demand other profiles that help us with the governance of cybersecurity. These are profiles that have to fit the legal framework that are being developed by the ENISE, the National Security Agency of Spain, and we need to have different profiles for decision-making and service provision. The regulation of data protection, this was mentioned often, and we're all concerned about this, demands that the DPO is independent and that they are not instructed in terms of their functions. In the first case, this requirement has not been achieved, and due to the fact that this function, whenever it exists, if we have a professional who's responsible for IT for IT structures, they're still in the hands of the DPO, because the person who's responsible for the information is linked to the IT security officer. So this role is not compatible. You cannot be a DPO if you're working as the other two positions. But my opinion is that the data in itself is not a problem, for example, my name. But if it's structured and it has other data around it, and if it's properly processed, then it becomes information. So the person who is responsible for information, regardless of the nature of this information, has to also be a DPO. And that's why people have to understand the difference between information and computer science, between the what and the how. So this doesn't mean that a person who is responsible for IT, just because they are in a department of IT, cannot become a DPO or a head of security, information security. If they have enough training and if they have the experience, that's okay. But to conclude, the person who is responsible for information security, they have to be outside technological departments. This does not mean that we have to leave them behind or that we have to exclude people who have an important technological background. But, of course, what we need them is to know the organization as a whole, to know how the information works, what information is being managed or used, and why do we need to protect that. We have to cluster roles, and those who are responsible for IT, chief data officer, or anything else that has to do with this, anything that's related to information that's linked to a unit with different roles. It has to be in a unit, or it has to be a person who governs the information of the organization. So the person has to know the information that the organization is managing. This information has to be protected. There has to be a bridge between the owners of the information and the person responsible for the technological services, thus ensuring their independence in their work. I was very happy to hear Alejandro Villar by Repsol saying that these roles should not be just a masquerade. The way in which they stop being that is if we know how to cluster them and to determine that we should not have so many roles, so many people, but to have governance in cybersecurity. In the public sector, we're working hard, as Javier Candau mentioned this morning. We're working with the public service department in cybersecurity, and of course the public administration is a complex body. This is an organization, and sometimes it's described as a dinosaur. But those of us who work here, we need to be collegial. And I say this because there was a guy who was saying this morning that he had difficulties. We all have difficulties, but we have to trust the process. Thank you, María Jesús. Some years ago, this was more difficult. We have to elbow our way, and I think this has not changed. Aside so, can interpret the official journal in a creative way. If you ask me what a DPO needs, I would tell you to read the handbook of the ISEME. This is a certificate that ISACA has had for many years, and it is basically looking into the governability of security and not its operational aspects, which is something that will be designated for technical aspects. Many of us working in cybersecurity have gone through many audits, and we've had to read the official journal anyway, so that's not the most complex aspect. Before I speak a bit more. I have to apologize on behalf of Pablo Blanco. We were hoping that he could be with us, but there was some contingency this morning, and he could not make it, and that's why I'm here. From the point of view of ISACA, we are a professional association. We've been working for, I'd say, 30 years in Spain. I wasn't even born almost when ISACA was started, and we have been in the world for 50 years with 160 professionals in the world of assurance. Now, cybersecurity is a topic we're now discovering, we're realizing how important it is, how dependent we are on information systems. And in order to enjoy a safe life and to have a safe society, we need to have an ecosystem that includes professionals and the administrations, that they really go for a safe society. How does ISACA contribute to this? ISACA contributes in the field of our professional work. We are a professional association. We work in R&D, research and development, so that within our work we are as prepared as possible. Then, apart from that, we develop good practices, we train professionals, and in a third stage, we even certify that a professional can do something, for example, a CFM, and we look at their knowledge and their technical training, regardless of the career they have had. We do not care whether a person is an economist or a computer scientist, whether they've studied law. We don't ask them. We have a book of knowledge, and we want to know whether they have enough knowledge and experience in implementing a task, and this is regardless of what they have studied before, their background. In ISACA, we started working around cybersecurity in 2-3 years. We may have investment 3 million euros worldwide. We've created a specific program for cybersecurity. It's called CXX. You go to our website /cyber, and there you have the information. We have lots of information for professionals working in this cyber world. This is a bit of a marketing term. What do? We want to have multiple profiles, because cybersecurity is not all about hacking. We need people who know about risk, legislation, many different things, prevention, response, continuity. We need different kinds of professionals. We have different profiles, and that's why we have some skills trainings and certificates for them. And regarding the challenges, and for example, the Madrid branch of organization, is the branch I represent here, I think I share with the view expressed by Pepe that we have a challenge as a professional, as the colleague was also saying. We have seen many times in many organizations that we have somebody with a technical background, but I think that these people have to be people who understand the organization, who understand the business objectives, and who are capable of aligning the world of technology that's very complex and the world of security with the company's business needs. So you need to have a technical, background, but the task is not technical in itself. This is a challenge we have in other countries. The legislation, such as, for example, in the US, in New York, CISO is a function that you need to have regardless of the IT sector. The same thing can be said for Australia, etc., but I'm not sure we're there yet. Thank you very much, Antonio. If we have time, we will go through the professional profile issue. That's another interesting and fascinating topic. Rafael, do you think that cybersecurity, the profiles, are going to continue like this as they have developed so far, or are we going to see a change? Good evening, Pepe. First, I'd like to thank INCIBE for remembering me and my company to be here in this very interesting event. I think that, of course, professionalism and cybersecurity is a topic we will need to be discussing for the time to come. And this is the 11th ENISE conference that we have been speaking about cybersecurity the whole day. This is a new concept. Before I was into IT security. From tomorrow onwards, I'll go into cybersecurity because I think there's a future in it. But anyway, what's true is that this concept of cybersecurity and IT society is something that we need to look at in a positive light. I think that this has a long history and a long path. It's a long path ahead of us. The colleagues from law enforcement were saying before that there's a lot of power, and if criminals are after us, it's because there's something to extract from this. And the good guys, we need to also see the positive aspects of technology. But as you were saying, this is not a technological profile, but a profession, but a profession that needs to bring many different elements. It has, of course, a technological background, but it doesn't have that. We need to have also a business background, and as you were discussing in the morning, we need to protect goods. We need to protect information companies and also to create business. This is not for free. So the concept of cybersecurity is going to evolve, and it will evolve in different aspects, privacy with the DPO. And when we look at what Pepe said, I have been working with in the field of IT and now what we call OT. And then we also have the Internet of Things. There's a wide range for security to work. So professionals need to have an important cultural background. We were discussing before we started the panel, that I love history, and I think that cybersecurity experts in the end will have to be a Renaissance expert. Maybe we cannot do everything well, unless you're Leonardo da Vinci, of course. But we will have to do many different things, and we'll try to do them the best we can, and we'll have to help companies to generate added value. We cannot be stoppers, because before cybersecurity officials were those who stopped things. Now we are these guys, modern guys, who help the business move forward. So if you allow me to ask some questions, do you think that this is an important disadvantage or even a hindrance, an unstoppable hindrance for DPO and to work in the classical profile that we have now, working with the legal services, that they have no freaking idea about technology? Yes, that can be a setback. I think that a DPO has to have an important legal side to it, to him or her, but they have to understand technology and have a sufficient technological background. And I think that there are different opinions here, but I think that a DPO, just like a CISO, we have to nowadays be familiar with the law or compliance, because of course there are things that have to do with that. Technology can do some things, but we are not supposed to be doing them. So that's important. We can balance. Some companies will give more importance to the legal side. Some others will give more importance to the technical side. But in our company, in CEPSA, we have decided to go for DPO that's more towards the legal side. So that's our approach to it. Okay, we will continue turning this wheel. José Ramón, what do you think about this? I feel very lucky because in 2006, this is already a while back, we started to belong to the Orange Group. So the Orange Group already had an organizational model for IT, and what we now call cybersecurity, as you mentioned. We may change the name now. And we had a clear definition of the functions of the CISO and the security chief. And the security chief has the topmost authority. Then the CISO functions are a cross-cutting position and is responsible for governance of the IT society. So from the beginning, we've been part of the development of all the company's products. We've analyzed all the data, not just personal data, that has been a subset of the work that we have done. Now we see that we have to perform risk analysis of personal data, but before we were already doing that for data in general. What has allowed us in Orange to work this way? Because we have DTI different DTI areas. We have systems, we have a network section. This is complex and different. We also have OT for example, air conditioning systems or for anything that we have in infrastructure. We have the IoT world. This is a new technology. And then cybersecurity and being connected, we have been interconnected from the beginning. We're an IT operator. We offer connectivity. So all these new figures under the umbrella of cybersecurity, I'm very happy that I experienced them since 2006, not day before yesterday when this term was fashionable, the term of cybersecurity. It reminds me of a cyber cafe. But anyway, that's another thing we could discuss. And the DPO is within the legal framework, and it is within the safety governance. So this is something that has to do with cooperation, and we all support. So you've come to the understanding, I think like all the other members of the panel, that privacy is an empty right, a right that's void without cybersecurity. And the cybersecurity is an odd word, and politicians understand it. That's why they coined it. And the cybersecurity is more than technology. Is that how we feel about this? Okay, as the four of you have taken the floor, I'd like to ask you a question. We have a general data protection regulation with the DPO. This is in the legislation and in whichever way we understand it. And why isn't the CISO not there? If we have to implement the NIS directive, I'm not finished. If we have to implement the NIS directive, I know this is a trick question. We have a great opportunity, especially if we're developing a new framework at EU level in terms of cybersecurity. We should think whether in this implementation of the NIS directive, whether we should have some status for the DPO, or you don't think that this is the CISO. And I am speaking about the whole value chain of the cybersecurity chain, not just the CISO, the Chief Information Security Officer, but we're speaking about the law. And this is a directive from the EU that we have to implement. So do you agree that CISO should be also inscribed in the legislation at European level? And maybe Spaniards would say we were the first. Okay, shoot. Okay, I have a controversial answer and then the real answer. The controversial answer is, of course, the CISO will not be included in the NIS directive. It's not included because the privacy directive has been written by a lawyer. So they have ensured that lawyers are going to work. But if an NIS directive were written by a person who is responsible for security, then that would be different. Oh, that was a hard statement. Yes. But I think that whenever something's in the legislation, you need to have a position. That's obvious. But I do not understand this. If I have a small company, then suddenly a piece of legislation telling me that I need to have a position is something that doesn't help me. It bothers me more than that. The legislation has to tell us what they expect from me, and then I'll have to find a way to do it. Because otherwise, as María Jesús was saying, we have the security director now, a DPO, then we'll have a compliance officer. So we are creating some positions in the law. I think the only important thing there is the function that they perform. The position itself is irrelevant. So in this sense, does it make sense that a function is recognized, functions such as the Chief Information Security Office? I think it's a must. If an organization wants to work in cybersecurity, they have to have somebody for those functions. We need to have somebody in the company who is independent and who is after the compliance of safety levels and that are adjusted to the risk, to the existing risk. Do we need to have this function? Yes. Will we have it? I don't think so. Oh, you're so negative, Antonio. We're discouraging all of us. You're making us all feel depressed. María Jesús, what do you think? When Antonio was saying that we need to have an independent function, how do you interpret this independent bit? Okay, independent is that you can do your job without interference. And this is complicated because independently well, we're speaking about independence, regardless of where this function is located in the structure, we will always have to have some checks and balances, some criteria. But of course, depending on where this function is located, the criteria can have a larger or lesser impact. Antonio mentioned several times during his presentation that there was an independence in TEI. So this is just linked to ICT. If we do that, we run the risk of having everything that has to do with cybersecurity to comply technologically with the technological concept of security. But this is not enough because technology is a service. This is a service within an organization so that, on the one hand, that functions and subjects are there through security, through information systems. But if we add security to this, then is this just service or technology? No, this is the information that the organization has that helps them make a decision. This is what's really important. So everything has to be linked. If you're just working on IT, then you don't see beyond that and what's happening ahead of you, which is the business, is the important part that the organization has to work. So the function has to be acknowledged. Where do we place it? Well, ideally, it should be in management. But is this something that's going to happen? Is this possible in the short run? Well, at least there should be some independence. And we need to start somewhere. For example, in my case, we need to start somewhere. But we also have to give visibility and see, okay, this function is here right now, it's being done in this way, but what is our experience telling us? That it has to go a step ahead. And we know that the legislation, for example, the DPD, it doesn't tell us that you need to have a legal person, a person who has a law degree, or a person who has a degree in economics or in technology. No, this has to be a person who knows and who has this knowledge, not just as something that they studied, but they have to know the organization. They have to understand what needs to be done. They do not just need to tell us that this is going to be under article blah, 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 and we also have big data. No, as the set of all this and how this benefits the organization. This is what we need to understand. Okay, let's have another turn of the screw. You're talking about the function and the NIS directive, that it has to be harmonized with the legislation of private data property. How do you see this? Would you like to address this? Well, this could be interesting. I share the opinion of my colleagues. We should not have in an organization a function, but it is in the DPO. But this is where we're coming from. I think that the CISO and the functions of the CISO have to be somewhere, and I think that sometimes organizations use this loosely defined function to call upon us to help them in this and that. And this is because they need it. They need somebody to manage IT and to have a good response in terms of cybersecurity. But I agree that this function has to be defined somewhere. And I think that a good time would be when we implement the NIS directive, but I also think that this will not happen because there's no political interest here. And as María Jesús said, we should not just think about cybersecurity. Cybersecurity has to be more than IT. We're speaking about technology, but we're speaking about risk management. We're speaking about opportunity management. We're speaking about how we manage legislation, mobility, OT world. So I wouldn't like to have the conclusion of this panel. Now, cybersecurity is something that's linked to the technological world. Of course, there's a technological element to it, but whoever wants to work here, they will have to know far more than technology. And if you ask about Google or cloud, in the cloud, nobody speaks about security as a physical independent element. We speak about cybersecurity, and then we generate resources and processes. And I also didn't want to miss the chance to say that in this framework of cybersecurity, we speak a lot about the DPO and not so much about the digital transformation that's happening in the world of businesses at present. And I think that in this case, cybersecurity has to be a good lever to be an important entry point for these processes. And that's what we need to be thinking about. Thank you very much, Rafael. José Ramón, apart from this question, I'd like to go a bit further. We do not have much time, and we really need to think about this. When we speak about privacy, we have a certification scheme already that's volunteer, INAC. So this is not just a function, but they have a certificate. And I think that's great. They have a certificate. That's voluntary. And how do you see this? How can we relate the world of cybersecurity? How can we use this to put pressure to lobby? You can answer this. He knows more about certification. Okay, this is a bit partisan, but just to widen the scope, I'll invite you to read the manual of ISEME, or the 2 pages that summarize it. And for me, there's the ISACA certificate I like more, or accreditation that I like more, but we have many others. If you have a technical profile, you have CISP, and there's another one. There's so many different things in cybersecurity. We have different schemes, 2, 3, that are working widely for this. And I think that by the end of the day, as you were saying, we're trying to generate business. And that's it. And the market will need to see whether this is... but you are in a network, in a pan-European network. And at least in the European Union, we can have a different profile from technical to managerial positions, and that does not just respond to the market. So we also had a problem. We do not go into legislation, and we didn't look at security. We have to, instead of looking at security, we looked at the legislation. Maybe that's why we have problems now. I have a question now for you, a case study. A friend of mine, the CISO is there to protect the company. I think we all need to protect it, and the DPO is to have the lowest fines possible. Who is more profitable for the company? The CISO. Do you want to raise your hand? CISO. The CISO is the one who is going to hinder the fines. Do you have questions? Do you have any questions? A trick question? At the back. Thank you. We hope that this is a tricky question. That's what we like. Good evening. I'd like to ask 2 questions because I see that you're very relaxed. And I think that there are many things we could discuss. First, for Antonio, whenever it comes with a certificate, and they say CISA, CSP, etc., their CV, they never go to the second round because I don't see it for that. So I think that a problem with the career is that we do not have a career. We have engineers, telecom engineers, whenever we have an event at the university. We have youngsters coming and they're worthless, and then I will finish here and then with your certificates. They come, and where do I get them? Is this DPO, cybersecurity? Why do I need a CSP? And then I've seen you very calm about the new private security regulation. Do we raise our hands to see how many of you are chief officers in CISO? In the end, you have to depend on a CSO. Just in case you want to reply. Okay, Antonio first. I'm going to be fast. I think that the certification, professional certification or accreditation, depends on what you want to do. If you're doing the SOC, we will be good to security office audit. But it's not a person with an operational profile. This is management and governability. If you want to be at the SOC, you have 5 certifications, prevent, detect, depending on what you need. If you want somebody to do forensics, CSX. And ISACA acknowledges that we do not have, recognize that it didn't have profiles, and it's created CSX. Why don't you come to an agreement with universities so that I have to pay for the training of these people? And yes, you have to pay me the first 3 years I work. I would love to, but you have to ask the universities. And that's it. Okay, so that's clear. I didn't answer about the private regulation security. I've spoken about NIS. But if you ask me about privacy, I totally agree with you. Those who are CISO at this point, like me, we have a problem when we think about people and the system. So cybersecurity professionals do not just have a technological component, and this is operational, but also data protection aspects and how the information has to be interpreted and sent to our seniors, to our bosses, and we have to interpret it. Of course, we cannot just report. We have to explain the governance of the risk of the data. And apart from all that, I have to have the information, the certainty that people who are processing this, that they are good and that this is okay. So we have had CSO and CISO that have to go hand in hand. And we know that today it's easier to have a CSO and a CISO than other arrangements. In our case, we are in an interim period. We work in the sector of energy and oil, and you know that we are slow, but we are on track. Very briefly, yes, maybe we've been talking a lot about the DPO, and I actually agree with you. Where is the training for profiles for the market, for the labor market? No, we do not have a university vocational training supply. And we have to know what they've done and to see what they know rather than them having a list of certificates. It doesn't work for us. That's an inter-sector panel to define the profiles themselves. This is important not just for Spain, but for everyone, except for the US, where they usually have thought about this. So we have to finish. Our time's up. We do not have much time, José Ramón, I'm sorry. It's been a great pleasure having these guests, and we now have a great chance to move the stopper thing to somebody else, to the GPO. Yes, and those are other topics. No problem. Thank you, and we can give a round of applause to our